Cheers!
Cheers.
Hello, and welcome to Tea with the Chamber. I'm Rebecca Herrera.
And I'm Janine McKenna with the Emporia Area Chamber and Visit Emporia. Very excited to have Phil Hayes here today with us. Phil is Vice President of the Arnold Group. And for those who know Phil, is just a wonderful resource for workforce development, HR issues across the state. I know you are very well respected, and we appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today.
Definitely, I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit and learn maybe some things going on in Emporia and how the conversation may add value to the broader community.
Yeah, it's the first time I meet you, so I'm very excited to talk to you. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, out of the high school, I actually joined the Air Force, went in the military, really kind of looking at it as an educational opportunity, and was fortunate I got my undergrad in HR management by happenstance. It wasn't by design. Once I transitioned out of the military, I joined Olston Staffing Services out of Wichita. Actually started managing our Hutchinson branch. Did that for about a year and developed an IT role just out of a natural passion. And 25 years later this year, I'm still with the Arnold Group and have seen a lot of things and worked with a lot of different companies on a lot of initiatives.
Well, first off, as founding City of Veterans Day, we have to thank you for your service.
Yes.
Appreciate that. That was some background and history that I was unaware of, so I appreciate that. I know you really follow the trends and know a lot about what's happening in today's workforce, and it is ever changing. So what are some of the things that you are seeing?
Oh gosh, that's a pretty broad question, and I know we haven't talked about. Quite honestly, I'm going to back the clock up a little bit and go back to about 2015.
Okay.
We started really noticing a pinch point when it comes to the supply and demand of the labor market and the talent pool, and conversations with our business clients really started honing in. So we dug into the data a little bit more. We push out a quarterly employment impact analysis, kind of keeps a pulse on it, but it really clarified and magnified that pinch point where the jobs started outstripping the available amount of talent in the labor market. And so the slack really diminished about 10 years ago, and once we came out of the pandemic, it has really taken an even more sharp focus. And when you think about 7+ million jobs, you'd see different stats, 7 to 11 million open jobs, and the labor participation has done nothing but really decrease. We're starting to see a little bit of upward movement, so that's encouraging, but the demographics are just stacked against businesses when you think about the demand and the opportunities that are out there.
Are they a lot of companies right now going more remote after the pandemic?
Yeah, this is always an interesting thing. I think that the pandemic organizations were competing as aggressively as they could, and so there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction by a lot of employers that we've seen, and so they've done that, and now we're starting to see the walk-back effect, and that's a whole nother challenge and a new bridge to try to build and get employees to come back. But I think honestly, Kansas employers as a whole, we kind of got caught with our eyes closed because we didn't think remote work was going to impact us, being an ag-based or manufacturing-based state. The tough thing is Kansas employees took remote jobs and they're working for companies outside of the state, which is also putting another constraint on our labor force here. So, and on the labor force, as tight as the market is, and we all feel it, we've felt it really concisely over the last couple of years, Kansas has the 9th highest labor participation rate in the nation.
Really?
And so as much as our pain is here, it could be a lot worse, and I wouldn't necessarily change places with the majority of the states out there.
So because that was the exact question I was getting ready to ask you, and I wasn't aware that we were 9th. I knew we had a better participation rate than others. What are some of the other pinch points? We talked remote, and what are some other pinch points for our Kansas businesses, maybe even around here in this region?
I think another component, really probably three. I think childcare is first and foremost probably the largest detractor or the variable that is out of alignment. And then you couple that with even public transportation in different communities across the state where those schedules don't align with maybe work schedules. And so there's off alignment. Childcare, obviously, I think affordable housing is an absolute critical piece. There's so many times that we engage with candidates that are outside of the state, or maybe in the Midwest, they want to stay in the Midwest, or maybe it's somebody that left home and went to the coast and now they want to come back. They come back and look around, and the options for housing is, number one, the supply isn't there, and now you look at the interest rates and the impact that has had. It was already a concern, but there's been times that offers are rescinded by the candidate because there was just no good housing options. And then the other thing I was going to say that I will see where I know you had a tea with the chamber recently and spoke about a presenter about doing a session on the last call with Mary Jane. But you look at neighboring states in the Midwest and what that is doing. There's been a number of businesses that are looking at their drug testing policies, and there's a little bit more, I don't want to say forgiveness, but it comes back down to loosening the belt on being open-minded to attracting the talent that they need. And if it's no longer, or if it's not a safety sensitive position, some are just taking a different approach. And I think we have to be open-minded and understand that we have to navigate these streams with the time, because it certainly isn't the same as doing business 25 years ago when I started. It's not the same as it was in February of 2020. It has shifted dramatically. And I don't think there's really much change on the horizon with this labor imbalance, because you look at demographics as a whole, birth rates are declining. You look at baby boomers that are retiring. Quite honestly, I got the back half of my career and I don't see any relief in sight from an employer's perspective about onboarding or soliciting talent. And then once you get them, how do you retain them? And that's the real question. I think retention is what we started focusing on when we're talking with our business clients. Okay. Recruiting is no longer the game. It comes down to retention. High turnover will eat an employer's lunch and time and true capital costs. And then if you start into that revolving door and that spiral, it is really difficult to slow that down, let alone stop it.
So what are some ways that some employers are doing different things for retention?
Yeah, I've seen a host of things over the last couple of years. I call them cute benefits. And some of them really don't move the needle at all, but it's something to say we got another feather in our cap. But quite honestly, it's not moving the needle or changing their stars, but they feel good about that versus saying, let's buckle down and let's talk about strategy. Let's really own our challenges now and how we map that out with the forecast of our growth and where we're going. And what policies and solutions do we need to put in place, and what do we need to challenge as far as status quo? I think inertia is the hardest thing to change. And if we've always done something a certain way, it's hard to break that cycle, but I can promise you business is not operating in the same manner they were pre-pandemic. And so more specifically to your question, I like it to call it the meat and potatoes aspect of it. From a comp standpoint, a comp and benefits, I mean, that's what ultimately is resonating, especially with employees that are looking at inflation and those pressures now. The pain at the pump, you go to the grocery store and put food on the table, everything is just shooting up. And so it's a very real conversation. And if the only avenue that we're providing employees to talk about increased compensation is to go entertain conversations that our competitors or other employers down the street, if we're inviting that behavior, we shouldn't be surprised with it. So organizations that are serious about it, they're looking at their comp plan, and a lot of them don't have a formal plan. And so when you wrap the data together, you do the data analysis and you chase the turnover data, you look at your pain points, it's no longer as easy as an employer either lagging or leading or playing par with the market. Right now, being in a mixed market position and understanding your pain points and where you can really concentrate your efforts and be strategic and surgical, that is what is moving the needle. And so employers that are taking that serious and investing in their employees in a number of ways, not just the comp piece, but providing professional development paths and career paths and highlighting that and having the conversations behind it, not leaving it to chance and circumstance that it's just going to happen. We live in a entitled and an impulsive society, and that is translated into the world of work, and we see it daily. So unless you're owning those conversations and saying, you've been here 2 weeks, you feel like you've got it mastered and you're asking for what's next, let's talk about that on the onboarding process, that here's the role you're in, and here's where we see this career path and the opportunities and the forks in the road that we're going to present to you. but we also have an expectation that you're gonna be in this role and master it. It's not gonna be a 2-week journey. It may be 6 months, it may be a year, but let's be honest about that and actually spotlight that roadmap for them.
Go ahead.
So what makes the Arnold Group different than your competitors?
I would say what makes us different, we are a staffing company where we've really differentiated ourselves. I mentioned I joined the company in '98 as an Olson Staffing Services franchise. In 2000, we rebranded ourselves, gained our independence from the corporation out in New York. And at that point, we had already been doing value-added services. And so we're not just a staffing firm, we're not just a recruiting agency. We do workforce solutions, we get in the compensation, we look at policy management or policy development, job descriptions, all the fun stuff. What's interesting, early in my career, I thought some of that was just tedious and it was just a little bit of an exercise. But if you're strategic and thoughtful and you put the appropriate building blocks in place, everything feeds off of each other, but you have to own it and you have to want to put that journey in place. The other thing is outside of the state of Kansas, in the state, we do temporary staffing, recruiting, we do spot filling, seasonal hiring is coming up. That's going to be a big push for us. But our Midwest footprint concentrates on senior level hiring or talent acquisition. So it's not just, I think oftentimes we get pigeonholed that they know us for one thing and they think that's it. There's a lot of solutions and we can come in with a much broader conversation, and there's times that we know that we're not a good fit and we'll own that. But we just sit down, we truly want to understand your business and how we can impact it and move the needle for you. Sometimes we're a great partner and other times we're maybe a smaller partner, but it just depends on that fit and what your need is and that time of where you are in your business.
You talked about the policy review and that, and I know our office has utilized that, is getting ready to again, that, we try to every so many years to look at all of our policies, what's in place, what should maybe be added in, especially with these changing times, what is it that we need in there? But there are so many different aspects. If there was one thing today that you would like to leave with people, a tip for the future of workforce, a tip of something to start now, what would that be?
I've said this for 20 years and I think it holds true probably even more today. I call it the handbook exercise or the policy management exercise. And because oftentimes the days and the weeks and the months roll together and next thing you know, you blink and the year is gone, and then we'll get to the handbook again next year. And so Tuesday never comes, right? And we don't really get to it unless we prioritize it. I always like to, and it may not be yearly, that's the lofty goal, but maybe every couple of years, challenge your mid-level managers and your senior leadership team to take a copy of the handbook and give them, it's a coloring exercise. I say come back to kindergarten and make it simple. You get green, yellow, and red highlighters. Green are things that we absolutely cannot let go. This works well for us. Red are things that we're no longer doing and we're bypassing this policy, but we have a communication disconnect with our employees. And yellow are things that we may need to tweak. And then what are the compliance or the regulatory or the statutory things that come in that we need to introduce just to maintain that we've got the legal basis covered. But I think a handbook oftentimes gets the short end of the stick that they think it's legal coverage. It's more about building your culture and communicating your position to your employees and strengthening and building around that. So.
I like that.
I do too. I haven't thought about it in that perspective, so I appreciate that. One last quick question, and then I know you have a sweet tip for us. But you mentioned briefly the quarterly reports that you do, and I love receiving those. They're packed full of information. Would you talk about that a little bit, and if people are interested in that?
Yeah, so really it helped start framing the conversation around the compensation piece, because we do have the demographics that are working against us, and if we have this finite pool of people, you've got active job seekers and passive job seekers, but if we're missing the mark on compensation and people are leaving for a nominal amount, that's trivial in the grand scheme of things when you look at the cost of turnover and you start quantifying that. So we look at where it originated with the counties that we have brick and mortar. And then we would kind of frame the neighboring counties. We would look at the unemployment rate. We would look at number of job openings across certain job posting platforms, number of people, looking at median and entry-level wages across the county. From there, we've had additional pointed conversations that says, okay, this is Lyon County or this area, but tell me about my industry or my city. And so we'll dive into those deeper conversations. Knowledge is power. Beyond that, we look at trends. One thing that is tried and true from the beginning of my HR career through the pandemic and now post-pandemic, and actually I think it's probably accelerated. People are leaving toxic managers. And oftentimes I think through exit interviews, compensation is the easy throw out to say this is why I'm leaving, but it's non-confrontational. But more employees are getting vocal about why they're truly leaving. And unless you have a true intention and driving an intentional culture, some of your mid-level managers may be the problem, but we're insulating and isolating that. But then we have this revolving door. There's just other insights on demographics as far as what the stickiness of employees are and what demographic is kind of getting through that, I call it rush week, the honeymoon period. And so where's the stickiness factor? We talked about the quiet quitting. We talked about the labor participation rate, what the unemployment rate is in Kansas against the national trend. And then we've actually got some surveys that we introduced this year as far as hiring trends. Are you on a freeze? Are you looking to hire in the next 6 months? And this is kind of all over the place. We've got businesses across the state that are on work share already. We've got a number of employers that are kind of pumping the brakes and looking at hiring freezes now. And we're just kind of riding the waves to see what these economic headwinds are going to present. But I like it just because it's kind of a look at the present situation, looking at the past, but then also a glimmer as far as a preview of what's coming from our peers across the state.
Well, it is wonderful information, and I would suggest if anybody's interested, reach out to me, reach out to you, Phil, and we'll make sure that you do receive a copy because it is great information.
Definitely.
So I appreciate that.
We appreciate the opportunity to come up and kind of share our story and have the discussion today.
Definitely.
Yeah, this was amazing. Thank you.
Do you have a sweet tip?
I do have a sweet tip. Are you ready, Phil?
I am. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Hello, and welcome to today's sweet tip of the day. I want to talk to you about what a CRM system is and 2 different apps that you can use to help you with them. So it's CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management, which is it's a software tool that helps businesses manage and analyze customer interactions. One of the first ones that I want to talk to you about is Hootsuite, which it's a comprehensive social media tool that allows users to manage multiple social media accounts, schedule, and publish posts. This is a pretty neat tool that is used if you have, different socials and you want to go ahead and use them on different things. This would be a really neat one to use. The second one I want to talk to you about is Buffer. Buffer is really good for primarily for scheduling and publishing social media content. It lets people post across different social media platforms, and it also gives you like a basic analytic and offers you content creation as well. It is very easy to use, very user friendly. It offers a broader range versus Hootsuite. However, they're both wonderful tools to use. I hope you check them out, and I hope that this helps you out with your social media needs. This is Rebecca with today's sweet tip of the day.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Phil.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. Cheers, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.